Ta-da! So I'm just going to start now, and people can trickle in as they will. And welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am a transformational coach, and I'm also an abstract artist. And I have a penchant for living creatively. So I thought it would be helpful and fun to put together a series of conversations with creative people from all different walks of life and explore what creativity actually is and how we can access it and where we can put that creative spark to use in our lives. Especially now when we're living in a time where everything's been turned upside down, and some people have had the chance to really reflect on, is this really the kind of life I want to have? And with work being different the way it is now, maybe there's a different way to structure your work or create your work that could be better for you, so you have a more wonderful life. And just as a shameless plug, at some point soon down the road, I'm going to be creating a creative coaching program that will be based on this program, and then we'll go wherever we need it to go. So let me know if that sounds like something of interest to you. But I would first like to introduce our guest, Sandra Koenig, and ask Sandra to just give us a little bit of background. And what I will do is if you don't mind, I will read her background, and then Sandra, you can add to that.
Okay.
Sandra is a San Francisco-based coach and consultant. She thrives on helping her clients create and innovate their lives and businesses. She works with entrepreneurs and leaders from diverse organizations, everything from startups to nonprofits to multinational companies. And she's also, as you can see from her background, that she is a talented abstract artist. And Sandra told me that when she was young, her love of visual arts led her to study design and work for 25 years in the world of design and international branding. Her background in design influences her painting style and her use of color and composition, and she paints directly and intuitively, daringly, I might say, and she captures the mystery and wonder of our experience as human beings. So Sandra, over to you.
Thank you, Nina. It's funny to hear my own bio read back because it sounds so formal, which I'm not. But I was thinking about this call today and my love of creativity. And I'll tell you, for my whole life, I've been an image maker, and it feels like, who knows where that love comes from. But my mom tells a story of when I was a kid. I was drawing on the walls in the kitchen and with my crayons, and my punishment was to be put into my room. And before she even had the doors closed, I was drawing on the walls in there. Like and she learned to just keep a lot of paper around for me, which I thought was funny. But when I was in high school and I was thinking about college, which was kind of in my family, my mom was a teacher, like there was no not going to college. I really wanted to study painting. And my dad had me meet a painter, an architect, and a graphic designer. And the only one of the three who was happy was a graphic designer. So that's what I ended up studying, because I think I was the thing they were coming from. And I had no idea what graphic design was, but it turned out I was sort of good at it. Like my first job out of school was for a big branding company. And I think I didn't realize it wasn't easy for everybody to just kind of take in a lot of disparate information and distill it down. Like my first few years in design, all I was doing was creating logos for big companies. But I always had some fine art I was doing on the side for fun. And about 10 years into my design career, I knew my heart wasn't in it, and I ended up getting a degree in psychology and my minor was in expressive arts therapy. I kind of forget that I did this. So for many years, I worked in the therapy work I did. The idea behind expressive arts therapy is you might, let's say for somebody like me, I'm a painter. If I went to expressive arts therapy, they wouldn't have me do anything visual. They might have me sing and then write poetry and then act something out, and that you move through different art forms. And that was always fascinating to me, to play with creativity in that way. And for many years, I was involved in a process-oriented painting studio, and I also facilitated that for many years. And it was a very different kind of way to interact creativity, like keeping it very private and sacred. And like the only rule in that painting studio was no commenting. And in that arena of feeling completely safe, what you would see come through people was all of the experiences we have as humans. And people tend to paint the things they repress. So there was a lot of sex, there was a lot of violence. It was a great place to sublimate things. For me, I had kind of a rough childhood, and I had to paint God for years. I didn't believe in God. That was fascinating to me. So much resistance to the divine, which I don't have anymore, thank goodness. But I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I had this feeling that the process painting wasn't working for me anymore, and that I had this deep desire to create art that was in the world. And so my current painting journey started. It's kind of a long, it's probably more than you expected, Nina, but.
No, that's good. Because actually it makes me ask, since you had the opportunity to dip your toes or more into all of these different areas of expression, where do you think creativity comes from? And we've talked about this before, that creativity is innate in all of us, but what does that mean?
I think that creativity just comes through us. I don't think it's ours. We can all access it, and it doesn't. No one is more talented. All the years I worked in design, I actually thought some people were more talented than others. I think some people have more ease doing the kind of weird projects I had to do as a designer, but it didn't mean they weren't creative. And even when I became a coach, I used to tell people that I love working with creators and innovators, because that's what I had done my whole design life. I live in the Bay Area, so I was doing a lot of work with startups and loved that spirit of innovation. But then as I learned this thing that Nina and I know called the 3 principles, I started to see like, oh, everybody can innovate. Like nobody holds that. No one has more capacity than another. And the same with creativity. To me, they're closely related.
So what do you think makes enables some people to access being innovative or creative more than others? And by the way, everyone, if you would be kind enough to put yourself, except for Sandra, on mute for now, just so that we can have a clearing background of no noise. Thank you. So back to you, Sandra.
I'm sorry, what was your last question? I got distracted. I was just looking at everybody.
I know, they're so beautiful. What is it that you think makes some people more willing to be creative or be innovative? What is it that stands out in their startup companies, tech companies, people who just do a whole bunch of different things?
I don't know. I think that some people just have less on it. They have less thinking about taking risks and failing. I think if you're going to be creative, you have to be willing to fail. Like if I showed you all of my paintings. Like I have the ones behind me I happen to like. There's a bunch of other ones that are not so good. But I love the process so much. Right? So I think there's something about the doing that I love enough to stay engaged. And I think some people just have such a deep love for creating.
So why do you think that is? Because um, a lot of people will start something and then they give up.
I think
It doesn't look
they have a lot
right.
of thinking. Like certainly for me, when I left the process-oriented studio where we never showed our paintings, I thought about pulling one out to show you guys because they're so different. My first images were very realistic. My very first painting was a self-portrait of me, and I called it She Was First, and it's very dark and ominous looking. So there's been a whole evolution, but the first ones I was terrified to let anybody see. And because I work as a coach, I sit on this couch all day talking to people. And I had a bunch of artwork here that wasn't mine. And I sort of gingerly put one behind me to see if anybody would notice. I had so much fear of just letting people see what I created.
Yeah.
And their reaction. And then I realized, no, I'm not doing it for them. They don't need to love what I do. If we take away, like now I'm sort of developing my paintings into a side hustle, and I do want people to like them and buy them, but it actually doesn't stop me when I'm painting. I'm not thinking, would somebody want to buy this?
So you're doing it more for the exploration of it.
It's fun for me. Like I love playing with color. I love playing with color.
And what about with business? Business, as if that was a separate thing from the rest of our lives, right? But how do you see it in business when startup companies or business owners are flailing around to come up with ideas? Where do you see creativity coming or not coming in that context?
I think creativity all comes from the same source, this ever pervasive wisdom we can all tap into. And I just think if people, it's sort of a muscle you can build, for one, to learn to trust and risk, to not listen to your negative thinking. Like for me, I'm surprised when I post paintings on social media because it's become this thing where like, can I just let my art be seen? That's still a thing for me.
Yeah.
And I delight when people like it, but that's not why I'm doing it. Like for me, it's just to continue taking the risk of really being seen. And it's the same in these companies. Like, what are they creating? And you don't know, whatever arena you're playing in, if the world's gonna love what you do. But you have to try. You have to be willing to risk. And I think I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I just see them hold themselves back from just trying stuff and failing.
So what do you say? And by the way, for those of you who are on the call, we're going to open the conversation up to you in a little while once we toss around some ideas. So,
I want to hear your answer to these questions too, Nina. I'm
okay.
just what occurs to me in this moment.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, well, I'll share two things. One is, when I was first getting back into making art, this was a bunch of years ago, I took a abstract collage workshop with a painter in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I noticed that I was getting nauseous as I was painting. And I thought, oh, it must be the paints. We're in a small room, and I was making up this whole story, and I'd have to keep going into the bathroom and coming back out again. And then all of a sudden she happened to say in conversation that she's had so many students that when they first start exploring avenues that they haven't been into before, it makes them nauseous. And I thought, oh boy, she just nailed it for me. because it made me really, and I didn't even know what I was thinking, but I just had that feeling of like panic. And I'm just wondering if you've seen that with either other people in the art world or people in a business context, because one of the things that I think is really useful for people to understand is that the challenge of creativity is not just putting paint on a canvas, but it's
Right.
a lot broader.
Well, and I love what you're pointing to. I love this question, right? Because I wouldn't have thought to speak to this. But certainly I learned all the years I did the process painting that there would be times when my mind would just go crazy, like it would be telling me things like run out of the room. And I learned over time that, oh, I had hit pay dirt. I was stepping outside of whatever little box I had created for myself. And I see this when I work with people too, that when our worst fears and judgments, and like when there's suddenly a flurry of negative thinking, it's because we've stepped outside of our comfort zone. So you kind of have to be willing to do that. Like some days when I paint, I have the idea that I'm miserable because all this thinking is kicked up. But part of me knows I'm just in the realm of the unfamiliar. And there's something exciting about that too, if I just hang in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people don't create what they want to create, because they believe that thinking, they believe, some might call it the ego is kind of kicked up. They believe that and they let it stop them instead of seeing what's beyond that. If we hang in there through the discomfort.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yes. What it's making me think about is how we're so quick to stop when we get uncomfortable. And I don't know about you, but I was raised thinking that whatever I was doing had to be perfect the first time around, not just perfect in general, but the first time around. So it really stopped me from doing so much. And I realized at a certain point that it was holding me back from, like, being safe really isn't that much fun. It's not that much fun. It's not like you don't get any new discoveries if you're always doing the same thing, staying in your comfort zone. Like after a while, it's like boring.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I took this is a few years ago, I had taken a painting class with someone who I totally adore, Jane Davies. And I was doing in the assignment, I looked at it, I didn't really know where to go with it. And she came over and I said that to her and she looked at it and then she looked at me and said, totally deadpan, well, if you do 100 of these, you might get one or two. My jaw just went, I had to put it back up. I thought, oh my God, you're kidding.
And that's true. I had a painter tell me that years ago when I asked to study under him. He said, you just, like, your first 100 paintings, maybe you'll get one good one. And then the second 100, maybe you'll get two.
And it was so quick I saw this whole train of thought in my head that it was so quick, like, I have to do 100? Like, I was so interested in the result and not the process of it, that at first I was shocked at what she said. And then I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. If I was trying to make cookies and they didn't come out right the first time, I wouldn't, take it personally. I would just change some ingredients around and then I would discover something new coming out of that. But that mindset about, the first time has got to be good, or even the second time or the 10th time. But
Or that it ever has to be good, like if that's what stops us, we'll never create anything.
Right. So I think that goes back to what you were saying, is that, or I'm going to put words in your mouth, that making things, whether it's on a canvas or in the kitchen or in a business, is really not it's not about us. It's about letting ourselves be open to something that comes through us, that we're like channels. And you hear all sorts of stories about musicians and artists who say that things came through them, that it wasn't resident in them, but they kind of got out of the way and they pointed themselves in a direction and something happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's also true in business. I feel like I'm surprised at some of the ideas I get, but when they feel really clear and sort of quiet, they also feel very trustworthy. And,
So what do you mean by quiet?
I don't know, like, I just feel this quiet nudge, like I'm launching a mastermind in the next couple weeks. And it just was like this quiet nudge, like, oh, this would be the next step in terms of, there's an offering I've done for many years, just a branding group. And one of the things I see is people go through my process and then they don't launch. So I'm putting together a mastermind where they do the process and I walk them through launch, so that they don't let those voices stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I think that's what happens. Like they're out of the support of the group. Anyway, it's just, I've seen some, I'm not trying to market this. I've seen some things around it. And so it was like a natural expression of like, oh, this is what they need. So I'm going to offer this. Like, we'll see if enough people sign up, whatever. But I could feel like, oh, this is the next thing. And if I trust that, we'll see, it'll go, won't go. Try another thing. For whatever reason, the pandemic's been really good for me. I have so many ideas for my business. Who knew I needed to be home alone for 10 weeks?
Right. The name of that movie has a whole different meaning now, doesn't it?
No, but I feel like we're going to see a renaissance in the world for people. It's going to come not from me, but like people like me who, for whatever reason, this has forced us back on ourselves.
Yeah. And that's really, that in many ways was the inspiration for my wanting to do these kinds of calls, because the world is not going to go back to where it ever was. And neither is the workplace. And so many people are saying, oh, now that I've had this time alone, or not in the rat race that I used to be in, I either notice that it's been a long time since I've been playful or thinking about having fun, or do I really want to be doing the kind of work I've been doing? Mm-hmm. So there's a certain amount of self-reflection that has been an invitation for people during this period of time. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, to kind of broaden the playing field, when you talk about taking people through the branding process, and I'm not asking you to reveal any secrets here, but what kinds of questions are you asking them to think more deeply about who they are and what's important for anybody to know about them or their business?
Well, I could give you a very long answer to that question, but what feels important about what I might say is, what I see is that people don't understand that the things that make them unique is exactly what should be at the front of their business. And people tend to want to create a business just like somebody they admire, somebody else they see, and they want to use their method or whatever. And to me, it's always turning back, looking within, what's really true for you, not what's true for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I get a little bit, because I do like to play in the world of form. I love working in business. I always have really enjoyed it. And to me, it's all the same. It's all the same. These truths that we talk about, like that we're always living inside the feeling of our thinking, yes, and in business too, kind of thing. Like it's there's only one place to look for the answers.
Yeah. Well, I'm on your side with that. And
Does that
another,
make sense? I'm sorry. I'm not sure I answered your question.
no, you did. You did in part. I might ask you another follow-up question here, but that whole point of looking inward for answers, why do you think it's, or do you have any theories about why it's easier for some people to um, be able to do that in a more creative, artistic expression, or maybe not, but have a harder time when it comes to business or something work related? Because it seems to me we all
I think
have.
it gets harder when we have more on it. Like we have more thinking about it. We think it means something about us. I mentor a lot of coaches also, and people think how much they're charging has something to do with their value as a coach, and it's not. They're not related. And it's the same in business. Like how successful your business is, I feel like isn't even up to me. Like there's so little we actually control. But if we get in there and we play and we do something that we enjoy in business, one, we're more willing to hang in there when it has ups and downs. Like many businesses are going through a down now, and we will see businesses go out of business who either weren't prepared or they didn't love it enough to want to hang in there through this. This is a really unusual time.
Well, now you just reminded me of something you said recently that I love, and I'd love it if you would say, love is coming up, so you probably know what I'm going to ask you, is you made a comment recently about businesses being based on love. Can you say something about that?
Well, I just was I did a free 6-week series and on the foundations of business. And yesterday was the last call. And I was surprised when what emerged for me that was going to be the topic was just that the foundation of business is love. And that I think it's the foundation of everything. But when you're going to create something, like a business is a creation, if you love that creation, you will also take care of it. You will tend it. And if that business is also an expression of things you love about yourself, things you're good at, there's a way you can honor that. There's a gentleness that emerges in the way you do business. I know there was more I said about it yesterday.
Well, one of the things that I find so intriguing about what you say, and I think it's true for me, not in the sense that I love the business, whatever that is, it's kind of like a made up term, is that I love what happens in the context of that container.
Yeah.
That there is something that for me that's really exciting, that there are moments of inspiration, that there are moments of discovery, that there are moments of people, sometimes even me, having new ideas about how to do something or do something different, and it feels really good.
Yeah.
And it seems like so much of in the past, so much of my associations with business have been very hard-nosed, very cut and dried, very aggressive.
Well, and one of the things, so this is just what occurs to me as you're saying that, like when people are launching a business, let's say you're a coach and you're just starting your business, if you think of your business as like an infant, you would tend that infant like your business is a baby and it needs some tending. And as it gets older and it can stand on its own 2 feet, it takes a different kind of tending, but you're still the parent. Like as a metaphor for, I see people not caring for their baby, and of course it kind of withers and doesn't flourish. It's kind of gruesome to think about. I'm very visual.
So do you have any favorite examples of creativity from across the board of different worlds?
Mm. I don't know. There's great art, painters and artists that I love, but um, and architecture, things like I love modern architecture. The is it the Disney Hall in LA? I think it's a Frank Gehry. Is it a Frank
Frank
Gehry?
Gehry.
I love that building. I could just walk around that building all day, take pictures of it.
And so tell me, if you can, what it is about that building that speaks to you, because it's probably not anything too intellectual. It sounds like it's got
No,
more
I
of an
just find it
emotional
inspiring.
capacity.
Like it just moves me to be there. It's fascinating to me that it's so reflective, and the kind of shapes that are put together that you don't see in more traditional architecture. Um, Another place that comes to mind, it's sort of a building and a painter, there's a small Miro museum in Mallorca. And anyway, it was like, I walked in, I was like, oh, this is my dream painting studio. It was a mid-century modern building that had windows out over the ocean. But it was massive, and it was full of these big easels and big tables and covered with paintings. But the museum then also was quite small and well curated, maybe 30 paintings, but you could spend all day there. There was a way it was paced to go through that you could really take it all in. Because I'm somebody who goes to museums and I want to see everything. Like, I don't know when I'm going to get here again. And I take in too much information. But there was something about this that I found beautiful, the whole experience. It was so thoughtfully done.
So what I'm hearing in what you're saying is that what speaks to you is a feeling quality. And actually, I think this has been a through line through our conversation so far, is that there is a feeling to the process of playing with ideas. That's the directive, rather than, oh, I must have fill in the blank in order for this to be fill in the blank,
Yeah,
successful, attractive,
yeah,
good
yeah,
enough.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my own paintings, my hope is that they evoke a feeling in the viewer.
Mm.
And for a while, my paintings were getting really dark, and I had to kind of sit with it. Like, what is it? And then I was like, just stop painting them so dark. Like, that's not what I wanted to put in the world. It wasn't anything complicated.
I wanted to shift gears for a second, if that's okay, and read a quote from Byron Katie that I discovered in Steve Chandler's book called Creator. And then after this, we can open it up to questions from the people who are here with us, and see where that takes us. And the quote is this: "There is something better than heaven. It is the eternal, meaningless, infinitely creative mind. It can't stop for time or space or even joy. It is so brilliant that it will shake what's left of you to the depths of all-consuming wonder." What do you think of that?
It's a gorgeous quote.
Isn't that an invitation?
Mm-hmm. I'll say. And you can see that in her life, what she's created and how it's changed her.
Yeah. So do you think that's a component of the of where we go when we start noodling around and to come up with new ideas?
Well, I do think when we're at our most creative, there's very little of us in there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's Sandra creating. It's something that removed me.
Yeah.
And that's pretty universally expressed. People say it's not me. It's sort of got my flavor, but it's not me. I'm the hand that moves the brush.
Yeah.
And I feel that way when I write also too. There's some way it's, yeah. Like who I don't think I would have chosen when I was 15 that when I was at this age, I was going to be making my living teaching people about branding and coaching, and you know what I mean? It's not, I didn't even know people did these kind of things.
Mm.
And it feels like there was something else much greater at work that was always guiding me.
Yeah. How about if we open it up and see what other people are responding to in the conversation? So you've probably all been on Zoom if you're on this call now, but if you are not familiar, you can go to the participants side and you'll see a place where you can raise hand. Or since we don't have too big a crowd here, you could just raise your hand and then start talking, because I believe all of you are unmuted.
A couple of people have unmuted themselves.
They're warming up.
Hello.
David.
Hi, David.
I'd just like to say that that for myself, I just dropped into a very nice feeling just now, and I would suggest that because nobody raised their hands, that we all did. I just wanted that to not go unnoticed.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thanks for noticing, David.
Yeah.
I know you're really good at picking that stuff up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any thoughts or questions that have come up so far in our conversation, or anything that you have in your life that you feel could be more creatively approached?
Well, I liked it when I've taken a few notes, and business based on a foundation of love. I've never really associated love and business, and so that's something new for me. And by the way, I've come off. I just was on the last of a Michael Neal, a whole new way of thinking about success series that ended today, and so. My head is swimming with thoughts and stuff. But to keep it simple, I'm just going to sort of stay with the nice feeling, because I can feel it all over my body now.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, like as Citibank said, let's keep it simple.
It's that who said it.
Yeah.
JJ's got something.
I'll ask a question. Hi, Sandra. Hi, everybody.
Hi, JJ.
I just loved hearing your story. I know some of your story, but I loved hearing your story, and especially about your childhood and drawing on the walls. And I'm just wondering, when you were saying that you were in, I think it was the expressive painting classes, like if you, or just in general, really, if you hadn't, if this hadn't become a part of your life, as far as any kind of expression, whether through painting, through creating, through business, whatever you do, how can you imagine your life like not having gone over, not sort of ignoring your negative thinking and keep going? Like, can you imagine what your life, how one's life might be different if they are not willing to be vulnerable and open up and express themselves however they want to express themselves?
I don't want to imagine it, but I can.
Yeah.
I know that for me, it's just always been part of my life to be creative, and I don't know if that's the nurture aspect of growing up, like that I wasn't discouraged from creating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just such a part of me. I feel like I can't help but create, and I'm curious about that. I don't know why. I don't really question it. It's just like, I know that even when I haven't been involved in more structured things, like I want to make stuff.
Mm.
And whether that's a coaching program or a painting or write something, or however it manifests.
That's so cool.
Except for cooking. I don't seem to have the creative gene in the cooking, It just doesn't occur to me.
That's so cool. Yeah, I just want, as I'm a teacher, and I just see students sort of holding back too, because of what we were talking about, just sort of the negative thinking, the not wanting to be seen, to be vulnerable. And I feel like so many of us, if we just ignored that, oh my God, the stuff that could be created is just like so interesting for me to think about too.
Well, and as you're speaking, one of the things I realize is in the painting, when I used to facilitate the process painting, when people would come in, they would often start where they had stopped. And when people are in the early grades in school, they're often told things about their art, like that's not, suddenly instead of making a squiggle and saying it's the sun, suddenly it's supposed to look like the sun.
Yeah.
And that they freeze and they stop creating. And so people would come into the painting studio and they would start there. And it was so beautiful.
Oh.
Like they would draw and paint like that 7-year-old, like that had to come through first. And people would have so much judgment, but to me it was just so moving and so beautiful to just allow that, allow it.
That's so gorgeous. I love that. Thank you.
And I think we all get stopped in different ways. It's not like I haven't struggled with it. Just even in creating my own business, I have a lot of thinking about it sometimes, or, is anybody going to sign up for this? Even if it's free, is anybody going to come,
Yeah.
And then I'm just delighted when it works.
Yeah.
But it's my own stepping out of, be more comfortable because I'm an introvert, to just not do anything, to not be in the world.
Right. It's so freeing to really, really not care, or to just throw yourself out there and with nothing on it, like you said. It's just such a great feeling. Thank you.
I love what you're saying, JJ, because that's my experience too. When I just say, oh, I have all these thoughts in my head about why it isn't going to work, or why I can't make it work, or, all the why not stuff. Excuse me. But as soon as I say, oh, the heck with it, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Then it's like the floodgates are open.
Yeah.
I had another painting class that I took with someone, and I really wasn't, I didn't think I was getting anywhere with it. And I was feeling so precious about it. And the instructor said, it's only paper. Right.
If we could only feel that way about everything.
I know.
Like there's another blank piece of paper right after it. There's another one and another one.
That's right. The next moment is another blank sheet.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Puts it in perspective.
Love that.
Thank you. I see Aubrey's got her hand raised. Aubrey?
Hi. This is a great conversation. I love what both of you are saying. I've got so many, so much like popcorn. It'll be a miracle if I have a coherent thought. But basically, I just love what, Sandra, when you said people tend to paint what they repress.
Well, when they're in that environment where they know no one's going to stop them or judge them. Like
yeah. Yeah, it just got me thinking. That's so fascinating that given the freedom, the freedom of mind to just express what has been stuffed. I wanted to hear what, how you think about art or creativity as it relates to healing. And that was one thought. And then the other thought I had was very biblical. I was like, wow, so, we really have put this thing, creativity, in this whole other category, and just connected it to art. But really, it's just bizarre. It's not about art. It's about expressing everything and all of us. And, God created, I'm not getting theological, I'm just getting just one reference, but every religious tradition that's stood the test of time is, God created man, and I think human beings just want to express the creator. That's part of them. I think it's just such a cool, holistic desire to express in every single part of life. Like, anyway, it's a very loose, not very formed thought, but it has to do with healing and creativity, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
That was so beautifully said. Whether you think so or not. It's gorgeous. I mean, and I do think that if we really get that we are the divine, that of course creation is part of what we're here. It's part of the play. It's like our birthright to create in the world of form. Have fun with it. I did, and to get back to your earlier question, that's not a small thing, but and your other question, I did see, I felt like for many years painting, the process painting was a place for me to sublimate stuff. Like I had kind of extreme abuse as a child, and I painted all the violence I would have loved to have done. I don't have those paintings anymore, but it was so liberating to just feel like the hatred and to have a place to express it, knowing I was never going to act on it. And I also, like I said, I had to paint God for years. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe there was a positive force in the universe. And I feel very differently now. I feel like all of that stuff that happened was a gift. It made me who I am. There were incredible gifts in it that I wouldn't choose.
How, was there something healing in the seeing the sort of physical expression of these thoughts, and then to see them as separate from you and really not part of you anymore? Is there a healing in the separation of the getting?
I do think there is. Like I feel like I'm stepping outside of what I know, or like but I've also experienced this in my writing, like a memoirs coming through me, and I'm having to go back into some of those experiences that I didn't even think I still held inside of me. And there has been a feeling of liberation through the expression. I don't know if I'll ever let anybody read this book, but it's coming through, and it does feel like it's moving it out of me. Like there's a way in the act of creation, I think there's a way we can use certain arts to sublimate things, to express it without creating harm, or, like I can have the thought that like, oh, when I was a kid, I hated this person. It doesn't mean I have to act on it as an adult, but I can paint that hatred and give it a voice and feel kind of freed from it. Like, okay, it's not inside of me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that works.
Fascinating. Beautiful too.
I'd be curious if anybody else has. Nina, what do you think about that?
Well, I love what you're saying, Sandra. And I also think, Aubrey, that because I've seen for myself that creativity is something innate within all of us, exploring that process of creating is very healing, because it brings it brings me up against the things that have been holding me back in my life, the beliefs that I've had that something shouldn't be the way it is, or I don't like certain things because of something else. But for me, the process of being creative, whether it's with painting or coaching or whatever it has to be in the moment, is that it comes from the actual process of creating is very, boy, there's a lot of words I could use, but it's cathartic in many ways for the parts of me that still feel vulnerable. Because now I'm not even sure what vulnerable means. Like, nobody's going to hit me over the head. I'm not physically in danger. And to express emotion is natural. So all of the preconceived ideas I've had about what should be said or what shouldn't be said, and how it should be said, and who's going to like it, and who, they start to dissolve by themselves. So one of the reasons I liked that quote by Byron Katie is that there is something about that innate creativity to me that's very healing, and it softens the past, so that it's not that those experiences didn't happen, but they don't carry the same meaning anymore, and I can go beyond them and what I thought they had done to me. So thank you for that question.
No, thank you both.
And you know what else I'm thinking about? And Sandra, I'd like to know, and other people on the call too, that this creativity, I don't even know that you can distinguish it from whatever it is that is our life force. It just is, they seem to be the same thing for me now, that there is something in that willingness to go with it, to jump into it, to follow it, however it is pulling or pushing or inviting you to come, that it's already, almost everything you need is already in there, is in the process of following that impulse. That there isn't a lot of figuring out. There's just, I like this, I don't like this. It feels good, it doesn't feel good. Warmer, colder, that example that we've bantered about in other circles. And it's so much simpler that way. It's not a big, hard decision. Like, oh, I think I'll try this.
Yeah.
And that makes life so much simpler.
Yeah, I mean, when you're describing that, I was thinking about, sometimes I'm working on a painting, I can feel like, oh, it's just not finished. I don't know what makes me think things are finished. And I have to be willing to, like, I might like one little corner of it, but I feel like I have to be willing to destroy it. I might not, but I might paint over it.
Yeah.
I have to be willing to play, to not make it precious.
Yeah. I think that's true in business too, right? That somebody is going to create something or decide to go in a different direction for the kind of work that they do, and to be willing to entertain the possibility that it might not work.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? That's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and
it could be the beginning of a new world.
And to not look for input from other people. Like recently, I had some input from somebody I really respect, a well-known businesswoman locally, and she was telling me this mastermind I'm going to run should be X amount of money, which was pretty high price. And I don't know, it didn't feel right. I had to trust that it didn't feel right to me, that right now. This is an interesting time where people are being more conservative with their money. Like, there's some part of me that just, I had to go with what felt right to me, not what felt right to her. And she can judge me.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Not her business.
Right. And not yours either.
Right.
in terms of what she thinks.
Right. No, but it's just interesting, all those little decisions that can go into like creation in the realm of business.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking of this right now, but there's a description of some of our habitual thinking that gets in the way of, or at least I'm applying it in this context of how we get in our own way from being creative, by a man named Joe Dispenza, who is very well known now in the world of meditation, and he has quite a story. The research that he's done about meditation and how we can access different levels of our awareness and creativity. And he talked about this cycle where, in terms of habitual thinking and how it gets in our way, is that we have a thought, the thought triggers a feeling, the feeling triggers a biochemical response, and that in turn triggers a behavior or something in the body. And because we're so enamored of that particular thought that we can't get away from it, it goes right back up the circle, starts all over again. So thought produces a feeling, produces the biochemical response, produces the behavior. So if I'm thinking I can't do this, it's going to look ugly. Nobody will like it. I don't even like it. It's going to produce the same chemicals in my body, and it's going to keep me from acting and doing those, trying things and just trying shit. So the place that I see for intervention is how we are dealing with the thought in the first place. Like how much importance am I really going to put on that thought? And the less I'm willing to take that thought as truth, then it produces a different feeling. That produces a different biochemical response in the body. And then that produces a different behavior. And that to me was really interesting because it gave me a look in a way that I hadn't seen before of why certain thoughts get so ingrained in such a groove in our thinking. But then when I go back to realizing, oh, is that thought really true? Do I really need to live that way? Then everything starts to shift. My body feels better. I feel freer. I take risks. I create new things.
Well, I definitely think when we start to see that, so very little of our thinking is reliable, we can live very differently.
Yeah. We can live more from that feeling level, that deeper level.
Yeah.
We are getting close to the top of the hour, and I have loved this conversation, and I'm just wondering if anyone has any other questions or comments that they'd like to share before we say goodbye.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this has just been lovely. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Sandra and yourself in particular. Thank you.
Yeah. And David, thank you for that posting. And what I'm seeing, I don't know if I'm freezing, is how pervasive creativity can be if we allow it. Just if we allow it. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a canvas or a conversation that is brilliant, but how in every moment it can be creative.
Yeah. I think the key is it just comes through us.
Love that. And then the tagline is, just say yes. Yeah, lovely.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me as your guest, Nina. It was lovely and really lovely to be with you all. And I hope I can make your future conversations sit in. It's been quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Sandra, would you like to give everyone your website in case they would like to have more conversations with you?
Sure. My website, my branding website is brandingharmony.com. And you can email me at sandra@brandingharmony.com. And then I also have a coaching website, which is just my name, Sandra Koenig. And the email for that is just sk@sandrakoenig.com. So you can see the two. I have a varied business life.
And so it should be.
And soon to be a painting website, a third website.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that.
Thank you, Nina. Really fun conversation.
Thank you. And thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. And stay tuned. We hope to see you next week. And my website, if you'd like to know more information, is ninalockwood.com. And coming soon, creativity coaching. Thank you all for being here. Go out and create. Have fun.
Thanks, Nina.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.